All right, assalamu alaikum. Bismillah. Yeah, we should, yeah. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Welcome home, everybody. It's good to see you, alhamdulillah. We are concluding, inshallah, tonight with our conclusion of the series of this book, Finding Felicity, which is a series that we've been going over and talking about how we can live a life that is aligned with our purpose. And in that alignment, we'll be able to find ways to get past some of life's difficulties, right? The anxieties that every single person experiences. And this is, just to kind of give you a little summary of everything we've talked about. We've gone over so many different, points of anxiety. We've talked about the fear of failure. We've talked about when things don't go our way, when you work really hard towards something and it doesn't turn out the way that you were expecting. We talked about fear of death. We talked about, the anxiety that's caused by being left out or feeling isolated. There's so many different entryways into this arena known as anxiety or depression or stress. And one thing that the author, Sheikh Ramadan, he continues to put forth, over and over and over again, is the idea that there's two ideas. Number one is that we have fallen, unfortunately, very far away from the idea that spirituality is a big, big solution and remedy towards this issue. So we tend to rely very heavily, right? There was a period of time where people were told like, oh, if you're experiencing stress or if your mental health is not great, then just toughen up, get over it, right? You'll feel better. And that's also not correct, right? And then there was a big swing the other way. And I'm sure if I asked for a raise of hands in this room, like how many of you are, in some form or another, like studying or studied psychology or mental health, there'd be a lot of people that are going into mental health or counseling because the swing went completely the other way, which is good because we need professionals that we can talk to, that we can process with, and that we can share our feelings with. But somewhere in that journey from toughen up, you'll get over it, to, book a session, 8 sessions, and we can talk about it, we can process what you're going through, we completely left out that there is Allah in this equation. And that our relationship, right? Spirituality is just a fancy word for your relationship with Allah. Our relationship with God, with our Creator, is a core piece of every remedy that we are looking for every ailment that hits us. And so the author, he puts forth that argument. And I think there's another piece that's really important, which is that when I was getting my master's in mental health, one of my mentors, Dr. Salman Tour, he taught me something that I think is really valuable, and I think everyone here can walk away with tonight, at least this. If you just zone out for the rest of the night, that's fine. But take this as a nugget from somebody who, mashallah, knows what he's talking about when it comes to mental health. He said that when it comes to your mental wellness, you really are in more control than you think. He told me this because I was doing a lot of my practicum hours, and I was interviewing, and I was counseling with groups and individuals. And he said, make sure that your clients understand that they actually are not helpless in their own lives. The idea that you can be a director in your own story, in your own movie. And this is what Sheikh Ramadan, he argues. He says that with the help of Allah, if you rely on Allah, if you really commit to that relationship with Allah, you will find yourself, as a result of your commitment, being able to come closer to this state of felicity that we're all looking for. We all want to be happy. How many of you have gone for 12 weeks in this series not knowing what felicity means? I've been saying it every week. You're like, Felicity, sounds like a drink, a matcha drink. Sounds like a coffee shop. You guys want to go to Felicity with me? So we're all looking for that happiness. Now, in the last chapter of this book, as he summarizes everything, because we've gone through all the different pathways of anxiety, he actually talks about what he believes is the core of the remedy for these ailments. Meaning, if you look at this, you'll find in some way, shape, or form, you'll find that everything will revolve around this type of remedy. But first, he wants you to understand a couple things. Number one is that every person on earth, not just Muslims, every person on earth was created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with this very beautiful substance in their heart. And the Arabic word for that substance is the fitra. You guys ever heard that word? Raise your hand if you've heard the word fitra before. Okay. It's kind of hard to define. Like in English, the best definition in the Arabic dictionary that I found when I looked it up was primordial state, which sounds like a movie, right? Sounds like a sci-fi movie. But really, when we talk about what is a person's fitra, it is your essential nature. It is at your core of your existence, what you feel, what you believe. And as Muslims, we believe that inside of that existential core that everyone here has, every human has, that there is a belief in Allah and a love for Allah. So it doesn't matter how far away a person is later down their, in their journey of life, or if a person doesn't believe in God, or a person believes in different types, or we believe that every single person at some place in their heart, no matter how much they're masking it or veiling it, or it's kind of silenced, it's been minimized, that fitrah still exists in every single person. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, he said every single human being was born with this fitrah. And that fitrah, it pushes you. And sometimes, in English we might call it intuition. It pushes you to do the right thing in scenarios where maybe like your ego or your nafs does not want to do the right thing. It pushes you to actually make the right decision in those moments where your appetites are pushing you in the other direction. And our goal as Muslims is to actually get back to that fitrah and to be as close as we can to that fitrah. It's like your default state. You guys ever opened something brand new before? You've opened up like a new pair of shoes or something, like a new iPhone. How many of you got the new iPhone? Tell me right now so I can make you sign up to be a sustainer. All right? Because mashallah, you're doing well. You open it up, and for the first time, you look at it, right? And think about how much like Apple spends on its packaging. It's an art. I mean, it's a science. It's like people are looking there and they're like, you peel it out and it's like designed in California, and you peel the sticker back. It feels good. There's a novelty to that new experience where you feel this happiness, this pleasure when something is brand new. Clothing, technology, whatever. Think about when your state, your soul was brand new. Think about before all of the rust and all of the residue and all of the blemishes started to appear by way of negligence, by way of skipping prayers, bad actions, bad words, bad company. Think of before all of that, who you were. And sometimes what I tell people to do for like a practical experiment is, if you've been on social media for a long time, like go back to your earlier days of social media and see what you used to post, how innocent you used to be. Go back to like all the way. They do this with athletes now. They'll go back to the athlete's like first post. And now the athlete is like a completely different person, right? Totally like unrecognizable. But when they were like 13, they were like, wow, Cheetos, yay. Like that's what they wrote. They were happy at the simplest things. Do you guys remember when you were a kid, how you just become happy at the simplest things? You would have, life was so simple. It was so straightforward. It was so, subhanAllah, like fundamentally sound. But then the more complex life gets, the more further away we move from that fitrah. And the more we search for things that will actually never make us happy, because those things actually continue to pull us away from our original state. So Shaykh Ramadan, in this final chapter, he sets out the goal, your purpose. Return back to who you were. Go back to your fitrah. Why? Because that was the state in which you loved Allah unconditionally. And there's a verse in the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tells us this story. He tells us when this fitrah, this soul, there was a point in time when all of creation, all of the souls that exist, that ever existed, were gathered together, however that may have been. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He asked every single person, like everybody, Alastu bi rabbikum, which is a question that every single person has heard. And think about it, it's actually very beautiful. Am I not your caring, loving, sustaining Lord. Is this not true? And the response of every soul on that day, regardless of who that person is now, was what? Bala. Shahidna. Which means absolutely you are. Oh Allah, we bear witness. So this ayah in Surah Al-A'raf is the proclamation of this fitra. It's the proclamation of this essential state that every single person has. So Shaykh Ramadan mentions this, and he says something very powerful, which I think is motivating for everybody, which is that you actually already possess, you have a head start. You possess what needs to be possessed in order to be happy. A lot of times we're waiting to find happiness at the result of some like new turn, some unboxing, right? We think that that's what's going to give us happiness. But actually, what Islam tells us is don't look forward for happiness, look back. Look at what made you whole in the beginning, what made you who you were. You know, the exercise we did about 3 weeks ago where I asked you guys, what things made you happy as a kid? You guys remember what people said? What did they say? People said like the most wholesome things. They said what? Like dinner with family? Dinner with family. I'll never forget. I was sitting talking to like this middle school boy whose dad bought him everything that he could ever have. And he sat there in front of me crying and said, I would give it all up just to have dinner with my dad at night. Because his dad used to work a lot as a physician. And middle school boys, for those of you who have never met one before, they are a rare species. They are emotionally not present. You know the overall rating in 2K? Like 89, 90. Emotions for middle school boys, like under 10. Their only emotion is when they're like saying skibbity and riz and like all this stuff now. Other than that, they have nothing. They just feel embarrassment. That's it. So for him to sit and cry, like actually shed tears in front of me, and to say like, I want my dad's presence. I don't want presents from my dad, bars. I want my dad to be present, subhanAllah. I don't think of these things, by the way. I just black out and go. Was actually one of the most profound things for me. And I want you to hear this. I learned this when I was what? I was not a father yet. I didn't have kids. I was teaching at an Islamic school. Allah tests us all in different ways. I was teaching at an Islamic school. And now that I have kids, wallah al-azim, as I'm staring at my son, as I'm looking at him, and I'm working really hard to provide, to take care of him, right? To put him in this basketball camp and to buy him this and that. And my daughter, and they're like, Baba, can you come upstairs with me? My daughter's like, can you come upstairs and play Barbies with me? And I'm like, yes, but don't tell anybody. But the fact that I have to like think about it, like she doesn't want more Barbies. She just wants one that she and I can share. And that is returning back to fitrah. It's not giving them more, it's spending time together. And you can take this analogy outside of children. Friendship, some of the best social gatherings that you'll ever have will be the most simple. They don't have to be complex. Social media is trying to convince us that if you want to have good friendships, you got to go on, you got to go on trips. You got to get Airbnbs in Tulum. That's the only way you'll be happy, right? But if you live in a place like Dallas, which unfortunately for all the Muslims that are trying to leave to New York and they're like, Dallas ain't it. Right, maybe you're not it actually, right? Maybe that's what it is, right? Like just going to a coffee shop or to get some tea and sitting outside and just, maybe there's some barakah there. Why? Because Allah Ta'ala created us in our fitrah that we enjoy good company. And you don't have to complicate it. So Shaykh al-Buti, Shaykh Ramadan, he mentions here that every single one of us was made with this configuration that naturally our disposition is to love Allah. And we have to find a way to get back there. We promised to Allah that we understood this. And that's why a lot of Islam will start to feel very familiar to you when you start to come back, when you start to commit, when you start to pray, when you start to understand. It'll feel like welcome home. It doesn't feel like a new place. Now, there's a second side to this development of love, because this is what Shaykh Ramadan is saying. He's saying that the solution for all these anxieties is to deepen your love for Allah. And we'll talk about kind of how to get there. He says that there's a love that you are all made with, but then there's a love that you earn. And this love that you earn is found in your behavior now that you are an adult, a person with free will, with the ability to choose. So all of us up until our maturation, all of us up until puberty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not hold us accountable for the things that we do. By the way, don't ever tell like a 9-year-old boy this, because they're like, wait, I can do anything? And I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that, right? Allah does not hold us accountable. The angels on our shoulders do not write up until the age of maturity. But then once you hit that age and once your mind starts to be able to process right from wrong, now that love, it's like this precious, protected thing. Now the protection is lifted from that, and that love, that heart that you have is now susceptible to the decisions that you make. For better or for worse, by the way. I know that we say this sometimes in a bad way, like it's susceptible. No, it's also positively influenced by the decisions that you make. And so these decisions, the more that you make them, the better that your chances are of increasing that love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, let's talk a little bit about how to get back to this state. Because it sounds like a great plan. That's what Shaykh Ramadan says. He says, just try to get back to that state. There's a chapter in the Quran, Surah Al-Anfal. Surah Al-Anfal is a chapter that talks about the spoils of war. Spoils of war means after a battle has been fought and the war has been won, there are things that are valuable. There are monetary valued items that can be dispersed and distributed amongst people. So what do you think happens? Like, we've seen this before. We've seen people who like start companies together and they're in the trenches, right? And they're working, and I don't know if you guys have ever been like in a startup before, but like they pay you in equity. You're like, how do I buy food with equity, right? So you don't have a lot of cash. And then the minute that a person, their work gets recognized and they get brought into this like monetary value, and then it's time now to like enjoy the fruits of your effort, what do people start to feel a little bit? You know, like I kind of deserve, you know, maybe I deserve a little bit more than you. Like I worked a little bit harder, right? Like there were nights where you went home at 6 and I stayed here till 10. And so, yeah, mashallah, we got acquired, right? Or whatever, we achieved this big goal, but like, if we're being honest, right, I deserve more. And this happens even amongst Muslims. And this started to happen even amongst the Sahaba in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. That there would be moments where they would have differences. And they would interpret differently like how they should be rewarded when it came to the spoils of war. And what is that? It's distancing away from that fitrah. Because the fitrah says what? What do kids do? I saw this video yesterday. It was so beautiful, subhanAllah. It's actually, I wonder if it's traumatizing. But anyways, it was beautiful. Where they had a child and they had their parents. And then they had a bowl or a napkin that was covering these cookies. And so the dad or the mom, one of the parents, would have one cookie. And they would lift it. And they're like, yay. And then the kid would have 2 cookies. And they would lift it, and the kid's like, yay. And then the other parent, the dad or the mom, would lift it, and there'd be no cookies. And these were all young kids, like 5, 4, right, around that age. And some of the kids, subhanAllah, when they looked at the parent that didn't have any, you know what they did? No, they didn't share right away. They started crying. They actually started crying. They leaned into that parent, and they embraced them, and they started crying. And as they were crying, they took the cookie, and they put it in front of their parent. That's fitrah. That's fitrah. Allah did not create us greedy. We were conditioned. We were taught to be this way. We were molded, right? Not just by society. Also, there's the shaitanic influence, of course. But if you think about it, we were raised, if you consider us each to be a plant, the soil that you're grown in affects who you are. And we were grown in a Western, secular, capitalist soil, right? That has, you know how they say like soil has to have minerals and all that? This soil had minerals of like racism, sexism, Islamophobia. Like we were raised in that way. And so we have to admit that some of these things we are unaware of go against that fitrah that we need to get back to. So in the surah known as Anfal, which deals with some of these like nafs disagreements, which the Quran talks about, by the way. Do you know there's an entire chapter in which Allah talks about good character, Surah Hujurat, and in that chapter, Allah actually mentions when believers fight each other. He mentions that. وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. How do you handle when two people are fighting? How do you handle that? It's given to us by the Quran because the Quran deals with real human problems. So how do you handle it when the verse literally starts? يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَنْفَالِ. They ask you about the spoils of war. They're lined up and they're like, so ya Rasulullah, what do I get? And the Prophet ﷺ, he would distribute them in different ways. And sometimes the distribution wouldn't make sense to the people that were there. So one example was after the conquest of Mecca, after the opening of Mecca, there were a lot of people in those battles or in those moments that were very, very new to Islam. And because of the tribal influence, they were very susceptible to just going back to their old tribe and their old religion and leaving Islam altogether. Why? Because of money. And then you have the Ansar, who have proven time and time again that they are down. They're committed. So after these battles, the Prophet ﷺ would take some of the spoils of war and he would allocate some extra for those people that were a little bit more what? Sensitive. They were a little new, right? It's like if somebody comes in and you just met them for the first time and you order some food and you got some friends and there's one person who's brand new, who's already nervous about what? Do I fit in? Am I going to be liked? And you ordered like, I don't know, tacos and chips and stuff like that. You might make them a plate that's considerably more full than your plate and the people next to you. To send the message, what? You're welcome here. You're welcome here. Right? Someone else might ask you, hey, can I have a fry? You're like, stay away. That person asks you, like, take as many as you want. Your friend's like, what's wrong? You're like, you and I know each other. We have 10 years of friendship. That person asks for a fry. If I say stay away, they're going to leave. Right? Except for the Prophet ﷺ, they're going to leave Islam. You understand? So he does this, and some of are you ready? The younger people from the Ansar, not the elders, they started to talk a little bit. These are people that were living with the Prophet ﷺ. They were living with him, and they start to talk. What did they say? Man, that doesn't sound fair. And their argument was what? We've been with him. We've shed blood with him. We've gotten, some of them have lost limbs, been injured, hurt, lost family members. Their argument is, Ya Rasulullah, we deserve more because we've proven ourselves. Does that sound like the fitra or does that sound more like the nafs? A little bit more like the nafs is coming in, right? I deserve more. Why? Because of who I am. Instead of what? Yes, Ya Rasulullah, you understand better. So the Prophet ﷺ, he hears of this. And he goes to the Ansar. He calls only the Ansar. He goes, anyone not from the Ansar, leave. Some of the elders from the Ansar, they come to the Prophet ﷺ quickly and say, Ya Rasulullah, I just want you to know it wasn't me. They actually, no, wallah, it's in the narration. They said, it's these youngins. They don't understand anything. Like literally, they had Gen Z issues back then, with the Sahaba. Like, they don't get it. The elder Sahaba were like, they don't get it. So the Prophet ﷺ, you know what he says to them? Listen, this is so powerful. Returning them back to fitrah. Listen, because why do you think they accepted Islam in the first place? Why does anyone practice Islam in the first place? Because we love Allah and His Messenger. It has nothing to do with like Quad M, as cool as that is. The Run for Refugees, Roots. It has nothing to do with these things. We believe in Allah and His Messenger. If you plucked us from Dallas, Texas, and moved us to like Denton. For those of you who didn't laugh, you don't get it. It's a joke. You plucked us from Dallas and you took us to some place very few Muslims. Would we just stop? No, man. In fact, that's where you prove your love for Allah. It's easy to love Allah in a place where there's so much love and there's wisdom behind being in a good company, sure. But we are here not because of the coffee shop and because of the fun things that happen. We're here because we love Allah. That's it, man. So the Prophet ﷺ, he stood with the Ansar and he said, I want to remind you guys of something. And he started to praise them. He said, you guys took me in when no one else would. He goes, I had nowhere to go. We had nobody. And I came to you and I had nothing. And you accepted me and you protected me and you made me one of your own. And he said, we've come a long way since then. And Allah Ta'ala has given us now victory upon victory. Like you accepted me when I was not victorious. And now Allah has given me victory upon victory upon victory. And yes, with those victories comes a little bit of like money. And yes, I gave that money to those people. But listen to this line, fitra, subhanAllah. He says, would you rather have that money or would you rather know that the one who gets to go home with you is not a bag of gold, but is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Like, are you not happy that I get to go home with you? Am I not enough anymore? And the hadith says they were just weeping because they realized that this dunya surrounds us with pressure and anxiety that takes us away from the natural state that made us make those good choices. Those companions that accepted Islam on the hand of the Prophet ﷺ when he had nothing. And now that the shiny gold and silver's in their face, they're like, I'd like some of that. And the Prophet ﷺ says, but you never said that ever before. So Shaykh Ramadan is saying, look, you have to realize that this battle is going to be tough. And that's why Allah revealed this in this surah. What does he say? He says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. You know, the other verse starts with, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَنْفَالِ. They ask you about the spoils of war. How much do you get? How much do we get? They ask you about spoils of war. The next verse starts with, verily the believers are. Allah is like, all right, let's do a little gut check. Let's see why you're even here in the first place. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. When Allah is mentioned, their hearts tremble. Their hearts tremble. Now, the scholars of tafsir, they say tremble in two ways. Number one is like tremble out of like awe, and some say tremble out of love. All right? Are you guys ready for this? This might be a tough one to swallow, but we all need to hear these things once in a while. Do you feel more excited and do you feel more elated when you hear about the iPhone 17 or a Taylor Swift concert or something happening, the NBA playoffs? Or do you get more excited when you think about coming to the masjid or when you hear the adhan? Do you get more excited when your body is being tempted or when your soul is being nourished? Which one makes your heart feel more elated, more happy, more excited? And for anyone who's ever been, may Allah Ta'ala invite us all to Umrah. Anyone been to Umrah, Mecca, Medina? Raise your hand. Okay. If you haven't, may Allah invite you, inshallah. For a moment, for like 10 days, whenever you're there, like a week, 9 days, you start to understand what it means that your heart feels elated at the things that bring you closer to Him. Like you hear the adhan. You guys ever seen that Michael Scott gif on The Office? It's happening. It's not a drill. It's happening. That's every Muslim in Mecca and Medina at Fajr. There's the adhan. Everyone's like, get up, let's go, let's go, let's go. It's like Black Friday. People, no, I'm serious. Like elevators, packed, people rushing, waves and waves of people. People are literally, you know, people check the NFL. Like they're like, oh man, the Cowboys playing? Yeah, they lost again. Oh, typical, you know. Bears, they won too, right? They go and they start checking scores and this and that. You know what you do when you're in Mecca, Medina? Wallahi, I'm not joking. Who's leading Maghrib? Oh, it's Belila. Yes. Let's get there early. Who's leading Isha? Oh my gosh, Shuraim, are you kidding me? Who's leading here? People start, they don't even know these people's names. They're just reading them. Who's leading? Oh, Ahmed Talib. Yo, I heard he's sick. He's a rookie, right? Like they start, and they start going on these names and they're just like, why? Because your heart now has completely lost its attachment to that dunya, and now for 9 days you're living in the closest thing to paradise. The closest thing. Ramadan's the same way. Last 10 nights. Look, I said Ramadan, I start seeing people smiling. وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. Like you just think of Ramadan, your heart is like, oh, last 10 nights. If I say suhoor fest, that's, may not be the right direction, right? Suhoor, yes. Fest, we should feel happy at suhoor, but not fest. Okay. So Allah Ta'ala says, وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. And when the verses of Quran are recited and they hear them, and the word is so interesting, subhanAllah, it says عَلَيْهِمْ وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ, and the verses are recited upon them. It almost like the imagery feels like when you step into the shower and the water just rinses your body from all the filth. Like you step out of the dunya into the masjid and you start praying Maghrib and you hear the Quran and you can just feel all of that annoying dunyawi soot and dirt and blemishes from work, from life, just rinsing off of you. You're being restored. You're being rejuvenated. إِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَعَلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. And in that state, these people trust Allah. Raise your hand if you would love to have like a superpower of being able to trust Allah in every situation in life, no matter what. Raise your hand. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Trust Allah. You know what that means, right? Like, I have no clue what happens tomorrow. I have no clue if this is going to be accepted or rejected. I have no clue. In fact, everything looks very, very negative. It doesn't look like it's going to go well, but I want to have such tawakkul in Allah that I'm not rattled. I'm not tossing and turning. I'm not losing sleep. Why? Because Allah is greater than my problems. But you know what's crazy? Is that Allah did not mention tawakkul first. He mentioned it as a result of something. He says, these people remember Allah so often. إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. When Allah's name is mentioned, when Allah is mentioned, their hearts start to shake. You can't have tawakkul if that's not your response. You know what makes our heart shake? If the dunya makes our heart shake, there's no tawakkul happening. You're not going to get there. The input is not going to lead to the output that you want. We all want to have trust in Allah when things are not going our way, but we're not putting in the work. We don't even listen to the verses being recited enough to feel our iman being raised. Zadatum imana, subhanallah. But we expect Allah to bestow upon us this unshakable trust, which is what? The antidote of anxiety. The antidote of this disease of anxiety is what? Unshakable trust. Why was the Prophet ﷺ able to sit in a cave, being chased by murderers, people that wanted to kill him, and bring his dead body back to Mecca so that they could celebrate that they finally killed him? Why was he able to sit in a cave, being chased by skilled hunters, and he was able to say what? La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana. Don't be afraid. Allah's with us. Ma dhannuka ya Abu Bakr. What do you think, Abu Bakr, about two people that Allah is their third? To us, it sounds crazy. To us, it sounds crazy. How can I be so trusting, Ya Rasulullah? All of the numbers are showing me that it's not going to work. The Prophet ﷺ says, Allah created numbers. Allah created everything. He's in control. When we believe that the dunya is powerful, we believe the dunya is in control. When we recognize that Allah created everything, we're not afraid anymore. We're not afraid. You know, a lot of people are looking at Gaza right now, and mashallah, Yaqeen is doing an incredible, Yaqeen is actually putting together a documentary based upon people who accepted Islam solely because of Gaza. Yaqeen Institute, you guys know what I'm talking about? Sheikh Omar, right? Sheikh Omar Sama? Okay. They showed a trailer I was watching the other night of non-Muslims who became Muslim, going back to fitra. You ready? Why? Because they saw Ruh al-Ruh. They saw the grandfather, Khalid Nabhan, may Allah Ta'ala accept his shahada, holding his granddaughter, smiling, kissing her lifeless body on the forehead, and they became Muslim because of that. They didn't read a single verse of Quran. Do you understand? That's actually like mind-blowing. And you know why they said they became Muslim? Because they said what? Why are they responding to that situation in that way when somebody cuts me off on George Bush, I'm like, why does God hate me? I get a nail in my tire and I'm like, Sheikh Mikhail said, I got to talk to my therapist. Like, that's how we are. Wallah al-azim, it's how we are. Your matcha's a little too warm. You're like, I need another session. Meanwhile, people are enduring a genocide and they are able to say what? Alhamdulillah. La hawla. By the way, crying, shedding tears, hurt. Being hurt does not contradict trusting Allah. But when a person who's hurt, just like a kid who's hurt runs back to their parents, a person who's hurt runs back to Allah. They don't run away. So when we are able to have faith, Allah rewards us with tawakkul. Don't expect it unless you are working in the faith and trying to build that. How do you get to that point now? How do you get to the point where Allah's name shakes you and where your iman is increased? Like, that's hard. الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Those people who they establish the prayer never leaves them, and they never leave it. And وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. They give from what Allah has given them. This one's kind of interesting because one of the greatest sources of anxiety is money, isn't it? Like look at the news today. What do they talk about? Inflation, economy, layoffs, all that is money. It's just money, right? Everyone is concerned about money. And Allah in the Quran tells us, give your money away. Now, again, to the secular atheist, to the one who doesn't believe in God or charity, they're like, I'm not giving my money away. This economy is the worst it's ever been. In COVID, subhanAllah, across the board, they did a research study on this. Islamic organizations in COVID. COVID is unprecedented. I don't know if do you guys remember COVID? Did we all just block it out? 2020, 2023, we were just like, what happened, right? Donald Trump was president. That was crazy. Okay, so remember he signed the checks? Okay, so COVID, every Islamic organization was having Zoom calls. You guys remember those? And we were talking at like an administrative level about fundraising because we're nonprofits. And so we're like, we pay people's salaries. They have to live. How are we going to do this? We're not selling products. Businesses were pivoting, right? They were like, oh, we can do takeout. And then some businesses like Target, they were like, this is a great idea. And they leaned into it. Now, Target Drive Up, I haven't been in a Target in 3 years. I don't know what it looks like anymore. It could be a warehouse with robots. I don't know. Because I just sit in the parking lot and they bring it out to my car now. So some businesses really grew as a result of it. All the nonprofits, Muslim, non-Muslim, everybody was like, how are we going to get past this? And subhanAllah, Ramadan comes that year. And we all start to think creatively. Okay, we got to lead Taraweeh online on YouTube. And then people were like, can I pray behind you? We're like, no, that doesn't work like that. And we're like, you know what? Let's just read. Let's read and discuss. And then the time came, last 10 for the 27th for fundraisers. And every Islamic organization across the country had the same expectation. It's not going to go well. And every Islamic organization across the country beat their goals by double. What? In the most uncertain time internationally, with a pandemic, you remember that word? I just triggered some of you. With a pandemic, with people unsure, with layoffs, with people getting their salaries cut, with no one knowing what the new normal was going to be, Muslims gave. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. They gave. Why? Because giving is one of the greatest expressions of tawakkul, of trust. That's why being generous, being charitable is part of your fitrah. Being stingy, being greedy is not. When you find yourself being stingy with your time, with your love, with your resources, realize you're far away from the way Allah made you. Allah made you loving, not just with your words, not just with your body. He made you loving with every resource you have. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, even the smile in the face of your brother or sister is sadaqah. Be generous with everything. That's how you get this tawakkul. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ حَقًّا. Those are the true believers. The Ansar were saying what? Ya Rasulullah, we've been with you from day one. We're believers. Let us get some of that. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ حَقًّا. That they are the true believers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us that playbook. How do we get there? Now what's the opposite? Surah Taha. Surah Taha, verse number 124 through 126. By the way, the previous one, if you want to write it down just so you can read it later, is Surah Al-Anfal 1 through 4. It's the beginning of the surah. What happens in Surah Taha? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually talks about the opposite effect. The opposite effect. What happens when you fall out of love with Allah? What happens when you are head over heels for this dunya? You know? وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي. It's a choice. وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ. Whoever turns away from my remembrance. You know what that means? Whoever sees it and ignores it. Because Allah doesn't hold you accountable if it was unintentional. You never get held accountable for things you didn't mean to do. So this can't be accidental. This is intentional. You see it and you ignore it. You hear it and you defer it. How quickly do we silence the adhan on our phones? How quickly do we defer prayer as a burden? I'm in the middle of something. I'll do it later. Yes, there's a time. Yes, you can pray it later. But oh my goodness, are we not afraid of being the one that pushes away Allah? وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ. That they will always have a difficult life. They will have a difficult life. The further away you go from how you were created, the harder your life will be. You'll get the new J's, like you'll get Jordans. But when that first crease hits, you're going to lose all of your love for that dunya item that you invested in. When you get that first stain, when your car gets that first scratch, when your relationship goes through that first fight. You made dua for this person for so long. Every Ramadan, people are like, pray for Jannah. You're like, I will. Her name's Jannah, right? Like, you know. People are like, pray for forgiveness. You're like, I will. After, her name's Rahma. You know, like, you make dua for these things and Allah gives them, and then the first sign of difficulty, and we just want to give up. That's a sign that we were never actually in our loving of Allah state. We just give up on Allah. When things don't go well, we're like, yeah, Allah, that's not what I wanted. Right? We treat Allah like we treat the restaurant. Send it back. Send it back. He says that your life will be difficult. You're never going to be happy. He doesn't say, by the way, that he'll make you broke and poor and sick and lonely. He doesn't say that. Isn't that interesting? He could have said, whoever turns away from my remembrance, I will make them miserable. They will be able to, they're never going to have a home, a car, health, anything. No, he doesn't say any of that. He says, subhanAllah, despite having all of that, you'll still be miserable. You'll never be happy. Because it's only the remembrance of Allah. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُ الْقُلُوبِ. Only by the remembrance of Allah will your heart ever feel like it's where it belongs. وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. And that person who lived their entire life, are you ready for this? Looking and seeing and enjoying the pleasure of every ni'mah that they were given. Allah Ta'ala says, we will gather that person on the day of judgment and they will be blind. قَالَ رَبِّي لِمَا حَشَرْتَنِي أَعْمَى. Oh Allah, why did you bring me back blind? Notice, by the way, in the day of judgment, there's no choice. They call Allah by who He is. They don't say, oh God that I denied. They say, Rabbi, my Lord. That is the day of truth for everybody. There is no faking it anymore. لِمَا حَشَرْتَنِي أَعْمَى وَقَدْ كُنْتُ بَصِيرًا. And I had the ability to see in my life. قَالَ كَذَلِكَ. That is the way that it will be. آتتك آياتنا فنسيتها وكذلك اليوم تنسى. Our verses came to you and you forgot about them. And so today, enjoy feeling forgotten. May Allah Ta'ala protect us. This book was about how to find happiness. This book was about how to get through the difficult moments in life. Notice, Shaykh Ramadan, he never ever said to anybody, if you read it yourself, he never said, toughen up, ignore it. He never just pushed you away from your feeling. He allows us. We did 12, 13 weeks of reading a book where he gave us really good practical advice on how to work through some of these very common pieces of anxiety and depression that all humans feel. But I think it's so beautiful and poetic that at the end of the book, he finishes by saying, no matter what you try, no matter what process you follow, if at the base of your heart is not the love of Allah, it will all be for naught. It will all be for naught. There's one fuel for fitra that he gives to everybody who's reading. If you want to know tonight, like, okay, I'm leaving Heartwork. I just saw this giant white guy cry on stage for a while. Why is he dressed like Angel Jibreel tonight? I don't know. But I want to walk away with something tangible. Like, what can I do now? He gives us something. There's a hadith, and this is actually like so powerful, man. You know, shirk is a big deal. I don't know if you guys knew that. Shirk, believing in other than Allah, ascribing like Godship to other than God. It's a big deal. It's the only sin that Allah will not forgive. Some people say can't forgive. He can forgive anything. It's the only one that he said he will not forgive. And I remember as a kid growing up and being like, you know, murder, like stealing, oppression, those are all really, like, why would he forgive those, but he won't forgive shirk? And I remember not really fully grasping it. And it's okay if you're there. That's okay. That's why we're here to talk about it. Let me give you some perspective on this. Shaykh Ramadan says that the way to fuel yourself back to your fitrah, the quickest way, like the way to get back to who you know you need to be, is by increasing your gratitude, your unconditional gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By thanking Allah for everything that you have. He says, أَحِبُّ اللَّهَ لِمَا يَغْذُوكُمْ بِهِ مِن نِعْمِهِ. He says, love Allah. This is the Prophet ﷺ, by the way. Love Allah. He's commanding. Love Allah. Why? For what it's a very beautiful verb. يَغْذُوكُمْ literally means what he feeds you, what he nourishes you with. Like Allah nourishes and sustains you bihi min ni'mihi, from his blessings. The reason why disbelieving in Allah or disrespecting Allah or forgetting Allah is such a big deal is the same reason or the same way that you would see somebody ignoring somebody that did something so nice for them. They took care of them. Imagine somebody's parents or grandparents or whoever, someone who provided, sustained, took care of, not for 1, 5, 10 decades. And then that person, mashallah, now is graduating, they're getting married or whatever, and they have an opportunity to give a speech. And what does everybody do when they have a speech? They get up there and they thank people, right? They say, I want to thank and they'll say my parents. Imagine going to a wedding from your friend who you saw, mashallah, how good their parents were and how well their parents took care of them and how hard they tried and everything they gave them. And imagine your friend gets up on stage and says, Assalamu alaikum, thank you for coming. My parents didn't do anything for me in life. My parents did jack squat. I don't even know why they're here. Are they here? I don't see them. Oh yeah, there they are. Thanks for nothing. I would tackle my friend into the biryani. Like I would actually spear that person. And I think you would too. Because such a flagrant lack of gratitude, it makes me nauseous. It makes us feel sick. When you see anybody who's disrespectful to somebody that took care of them, parent or not, it doesn't matter. When you see that flagrant rejection of gratitude, it makes your fitra kick in. You're like, right? So now take that to the level of Allah. When a person forgets Allah, denies Allah, rejects Allah, they are actually turning away from the one who gave them everything. So if you do the math, the way that you turn back to Allah is by being grateful for everything, even the bad times. It's easy to be grateful in the good times. It's easy to be grateful in the good times. Some of you are grateful for like things. We're all grateful when Allah gives us what we want. Can we be grateful even when Allah doesn't give us what we want? We're grateful in health. Can you be grateful when you're sick? And sometimes Allah will take the good away from you so that you can try it out. You can feel, okay, let me see if I can be grateful. Let me see if I actually really do love Allah. If Allah took away everything from me today, if I lost everything in one night, and I woke up tomorrow morning completely just confused. I don't know where my life is going. Do I still love Allah? Do I pray Fajr that day? Or do I not? That's the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you want to know what happens as a result of that? إِذَا أَحَبَّ اللَّهُ الْعَبْدَ نَادَى جِبْرِيلَ إِنِّي أُحِبُّ فَلَانَ فَأَحِبُّهُ. When Allah Ta'ala loves you, when you prove yourself, when you do your best, Allah Ta'ala loves you. What He does, He calls out to Jibreel. You know Jibreel, the same one that revealed the Quran. Can you imagine that? Jibreel came with the Quran to the Prophet ﷺ, and he has to hear you and me, he has to hear our crusty, dusty old names. Can you imagine that? Jibreel is the one that was like, Iqra to the Prophet ﷺ. And just because Allah loves you or me, Allah calls Jibreel. Jibreel says, yes, Allah. And he says, I love AbdelRahman, love him. Jibreel's like, who? I love AbdelRahman. We're not worthy of being mentioned to Jibreel. We're not worthy of it. But that's what love does. Love is a gift to those who are even not worthy. We'll never be worthy of it. But Allah is so loving that when you show the smallest fraction of effort, Allah Ta'ala makes you feel like you are a superstar, like you've succeeded. Imam Ghazali, he says, because it wouldn't be one of my classes if I didn't quote him at least once. He says, أصل المحبة معرفة النعمة. The root, pause for the pun. The root of love is ma'rifatul al-ni'mah. Is ma'rifah, by the way, is a deep level of recognition. It's not like a, yeah, my life is good. It's like deeply understanding that your life is good. It's complaining that your life is hard and then walking outside and seeing somebody who really has it hard. It's saying, ugh, I have nothing to eat, and then scrolling on Instagram and seeing people who actually have nothing to eat. That's ma'rifah. Ma'rifah is when the knowledge of something makes you feel shy of that thing. Recognizing the blessings of Allah. Then he says, استغرق العبد في المعرفة استغرق في المحبة. The more that the servant immerses themselves and dives deep into the favors of Allah, the more that they will develop love for Allah that can never be shook. I'll leave you guys with this. We talked a lot about anxiety, and we talked a lot about depression, and we talked a lot about different symptoms and diseases that compound into those states. I'm not trying to oversimplify it. There is a space in Islam to talk to people that are trained and that can help us with different methods of therapy to understand why life is the way it is. Absolutely, without a doubt. I got my master's in mental health, by the way, 2 years. a lot of tuition. Okay? So I'm there. But I want to remind us all that you cannot find a solution for your soul from this dunya. Imam Ghazali says, your soul was created in the heavens, and so it needs its nourishment from the heaven. Your body was created from dirt, so it needs its nourishment from here. Don't ever try to give your soul nourishment from this place, because it will not feed it properly. If we can understand that the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the core of being mentally well, spiritually well, being grounded, being connected, having tawakkul, having sabr, having patience, having resilience, having love, having gratitude, compassion, grace, all of these things that we'd love to have that are the opposite of these ailments that we talked about. If we can understand that they come from loving Allah, then we have accomplished an amazing task. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the health of our heart and our mind. We ask Allah ta'ala to protect us from the anxieties of this life. We ask Allah ta'ala to protect us from our investment into the dunya to the point that we trust it more than we trust Him. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us unshakable faith. We ask Allah ta'ala to protect us from the challenges of this dunya. And we ask Allah to make those challenges a means of us coming closer to Him, not further away. We ask Allah ta'ala to grant us sakina, to grant us tranquility. We ask Allah ta'ala to give us a good life, not a bad life. We ask Allah ta'ala to make us cognizant and aware of our blessings and aware of all of the things that He has favored us with. We ask Allah ta'ala to make those recognitions of those favors a means for our closeness to Him. We ask Allah ta'ala to forgive us for our shortcomings. We ask Allah ta'ala to forgive us for our deferrals, for our pushing away of our responsibilities. We ask Allah to make it so that our hearts tremble with love when His name is mentioned. We ask Allah ta'ala to allow us to be those people that when the Quran is recited, our faith increases. We ask Allah ta'ala to make us those that have unshakable faith, unshakable trust, even when the room is dark, even when we don't know what's going on, even when we don't know where we are, we know that we are with Allah and there's nothing to be afraid of. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Jazakallah khairan. May Allah ta'ala accept from us. May Allah ta'ala overlook our shortcomings. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If I can ask everybody, inshallah, to leave the black folding chairs where they are. The back jacks, the floor chairs, that's fine. You can move those. But the folding chairs, we'll leave those to where they are, inshallah. And if you have time after Salat al-Isha, then please do come back and help us stack them. But there's a way that we have to stack them that requires some of our volunteers to be here. So let's wait to do that until after Isha when they're back. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Isha prayer is in 3 minutes. So please make your way over to the Musalla if you're joining. If you're going to join us for prayer, please make your way over. Jazakallah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.